Welcome to Self-Made Millionaire Tips. Today I'm excited. Colin Plume. Probably should introduce myself. I'm excited to have Curtis Morley today, who's what a resume. Award-winning serial entrepreneur, educator, patent holder, thought leader, innovator, author of the Entrepreneur's Paradox, which was a finalist in the 2021 International Book Awards, Wall Street Journal bestseller, and someone that's started a lot of businesses. I mean, I could read your resume for probably 10 minutes going all the way down. You founded some multi-million-dollar companies. You've helped a lot of entrepreneurs scale their businesses, and excited to pick your brain and talk about some business. So thanks for coming on. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Colin. I'm excited about the discussion.
Yeah, me too. I know we talked basketball off, but we'll get into that later. Big Utah Jazz fan. We could talk about that for hours too. But let's start early. Curtis, your first company, obviously out of the gate, everybody makes mistakes. What were some of the mistakes that you made, and how did you recover and sort of learn from them to kind of grow that first successful business?
It's funny you ask that, because quite frankly, that's why I wrote this book.
Oh, really? Okay.
Is because I made every mistake, Colin. Like and that's not hyperbole. That is, like, some of the mistakes I made 2 and 3 times just so that I could make sure I got those mistakes.
Yeah. How many relatives did you hire?
Actually, that's one that I actually did make that mistake.
Absolutely. We all do that, right?
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. And if I could go back to 26-year-old Curtis and just share that this is the message that I would give him, because there is a better way to do business. It's so interesting, because my first couple of businesses, I no joke, I made every mistake possible.
Mm-hmm.
I had imposter syndrome. I was trying to climb the mountain alone. I thought that, I couldn't share and I couldn't build this network because I had to keep all these guarded secrets. All of the mistakes. I didn't hire an accountant. I was acting as legal for my company.
Oh, wow.
Big mistake. Don't do that one.
Yeah.
All of these things.
These are all common mistakes, I think, when you start out, because, a bookkeeper, you don't know how valuable it is to have those things until somebody, takes that task off your plate. Right. And when you started, and even with some of my businesses, we got bookkeepers sort of late too. I remember one of our businesses, we were still writing paper checks for a while when those were sort of unnecessary. You learn the mistakes of that, not only time, but even that paper check, just totally random. With me, one of our old employees stole some of the data from the paper check and tried to charge stuff, because on the checks, all the information is there. So many years later, we got these charges, and I was like, what are these? How is this? And we figured out who it was. And they just thought, maybe we wouldn't notice at this point. But these are, obviously all mistakes that are pretty common, but sometimes people can't get out of them. They make one bad one and they're done. So obviously you did a lot of these, you made the mistakes. What was the first business that you said that you sort of started to see some success, that kind of turned the corner for you?
Yeah, it was a full service media agency. And it was kind of at the burgeoning era of the internet, where everything was exciting. And, Internet 2.0 was a big thing. And we got into interactive media online. And so I founded a creative agency that did everything from logo and branding all the way through heavy back-end database work, TV and radio commercials. So a full service interactive marketing agency.
Yeah.
And it was one of the first in Utah, where I'm from. And it was crazy, because one of the big mistakes, or I wouldn't say mistakes, one of the things I didn't know was cash flow.
Mm. Hmm.
And one month I would just be filthy rich, and the next month I would be destitute. And
Hmm.
that just kept happening over and over and over again. And that cycle was just exhausting.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, it's scary too. It's really scary, especially when you're, I don't know how you guys build in that agency, but sometimes you're waiting on money too. So
Yeah.
that's a hard part is, balancing to know, how much money you have, how much to hire employees, how much, these are all the early problems as you're scaling a business. And it's interesting that your business did branding and logos and TV and I mean, nowadays, like there's most companies maybe just do one of those, right? It's so segmented now into
Yeah.
specific areas. But back then, yeah, I mean, everybody, I mean, ideally everybody wants to go to one place to do everything, but it's a lot, obviously a lot has changed in the marketing space.
Yeah.
So you took off in the marketing world. Did you sell that business? Do you still have that business, or what happened?
I don't. I'm no longer even a part of that. In the meantime, as we were going about that business, I started a digital sheet music company. It was the first interactive digital sheet music online,
Mm.
uh, where you can pull up a piece of music, you can hit the play button, and it highlights the notes on the music as it's playing,
Oh,
and
interesting.
you can take parts in and out. What part do you sing, Colin?
What part do I sing?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Singing is not something that we don't want to get this banned off any of the channels here. I'm learning piano.
Nice.
So I have a few lean on me. I'm starting at the beginning, the basics here, the chords. So I am doing it, but there's parts where I'm supposed to sing, but I've told my piano coach that I want her to enjoy it and not there. So
uh,
what,
with this music app, you can take the parts in and out. So if you're a bass and you just want to hear the bass part, you can pull everything else out and just listen to that part. So very interactive music player.
wow.
At the same time as I was building this agency, and so yeah, kind of a fun divergence.
Yeah. So you had the marketing and then you dived into the music business and you sounds like you're wearing a lot of hats and you were doing a number of things. And what would be your advice to yourself going back 26, when you were 26, 27, 28? What would be your advice today to that entrepreneur?
There's three things. Yeah, for sure. There's three things. The first is to break out of the paradox. And in order to break out of the paradox, you have to drain the swamp. And what I mean by that is the paradox that is entrepreneurship is that the thing that gets you into business is what will actively prevent you from succeeding in business.
Mm-hmm.
So the reason you got in business in the first place is why you'll keep hitting that glass ceiling, is why you'll never break out into this huge success, is the very reason you got into the business. It's this paradox that because you're the expert, because you may be the best in the world at whatever you do, that's that fact that you are the best in the world and that you're still doing those activities, that will always cap you, that will always limit you to hit this ceiling.
Mm-hmm.
It's not until you're able to break out of the paradox, drain the swamp, that you can start climbing your mountain. And I coach entrepreneurs, I coach them, mentor them, help them go from basement all the way to buyout. And one question I ask entrepreneurs along this line is, if you're building the product, who's building the business?
Right.
If you're the expert, if you're the one that has to be either in the oven or in the code or in, doing all of the things, who's building the business? If you're
Right.
building the product, who's building the business? And we actually do an identity reboot with these entrepreneurs, where we have them step out of that persona, step
Mm-hmm.
out of that identity, and say, it's time to change from being the expert in this product to being the expert in this business.
Mm-hmm. And probably a big part of that too is realizing that you can only do so much. So if you're the expert and your team doesn't understand the product or other people don't know how to fix it or do it, that can be a real hindrance to scaling or growing also, right? I mean, just not, there's this thing where you think like, you want to keep it secretive and you want to hide stuff, but obviously giving some of the secret sauce out to your team and empowering them is really helpful also, which, I don't know if that's where you're kind of going with that, but that's something that I've found is really powerful, is just, empowering them with all the information that you have. And there is this, a lot of times you want to hold things secret, right? You want to hold it in because you think it's, but most businesses are, unless you are having something that's totally unique that no one, but you get a patent, and that's why you put these agreements together and you got NDAs, but at the end of the day, to scale something, you have to empower people to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. You have to stop being the best in the world at whatever craft is, so that you can reinvent yourself as the best in the world at your business.
Exactly. And speaking of climbing, you climbed Mount Kilimanjaro.
I did.
Why would you do something like that? That seems something like that doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, I've seen people do it, I've heard about it, but tell me why you had to do it.
The so ever since I was little, my original goal was Everest. And then as I grew up, I found out what the mortality rate is on Everest, which is way too high for me. It's about 30% of all the people that go up stay on the
All
mountain.
right, I didn't know it was that high. Oh my goodness, yeah.
And so I said, you know what? I still want to climb. I still want the challenge. I still want the adventure. And what mountains don't kill people?
Right.
And Kilimanjaro has a very low mortality rate, still by far the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. No question about it. I've qualified for Boston, the Boston Marathon. I've done an Ironman in Hawaii. And I have nothing to compare to how hard it was to climb to the top of that mountain at 19,341 feet. And to put that in perspective, when you fly across the country, the airplane is at 20,000 feet.
Wow.
We
Yeah,
were
that does give a lot of perspective.
we were right there. The
Wow.
mountain is so high you can actually see the curvature of the earth. You can actually see the earth bend on the horizon.
Oh my goodness. What was it like when you hit the top?
It was amazing. They have a saying. They have a saying that you can't go up without coming down changed. And there wasn't anyone in our expedition that wasn't a different person when they came back down.
Wow.
It absolutely strips you down to nothing but your soul.
Mm-hmm.
You are completely naked of title, of wealth, of health, of anything. The only thing you have left standing on top of that mountain is your soul.
Mm-hmm.
And it really tells you who you are.
Wow. And the bonding, I'm sure, with the people you were up with is probably, those people, you'll never forget them.
Yeah.
And that experience together.
Yeah.
So I commend you for it. When I read that you did that, I said, well, is this similar to glamping? Is it kind of similar to, no, it's not. This is the real deal. No, I commend you. So you're saying starting a business is easier than climbing Mount Kilimanjaro. So that's good advice, right? That
Physically, yes. Physically, yes. Emotionally, we're still on the fence there.
Well, that's amazing. That's really how do you relate that you did that experience? Has that shaped you in your business and your coaching? What do you think? What was one change that happened after you got off that mountain?
Absolutely. It's, when I wrote The Entrepreneur's Paradox, I had about 3/4 of it written before I started climbing. And I came back down from the mountain and I rewrote the entire book.
Is that right? Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And this experience was so transformational. Like I can't even extend how transformational it was, because
Wow.
it like I said, you have to be a different person when you come back down.
Right.
You don't have another choice.
Right.
And to put in perspective, the base camp is at 15,500 feet.
Mm,
That's higher than anywhere in the continental United States.
mm,
There's nowhere in the continental United States that's that high, and that was base camp.
right.
that's that's where you start climbing at 1 a.m. And we had to go up and back down and it was about 2.2 miles from base camp to the top. So think about that. 2.2 miles in over 4,000 feet of elevation. And
Wow.
we're already starting at 15,000. And we had to start at 1 a.m., climb all the way through the night and the next day to get back before it got cold again.
Mm,
Because it was, when we started, it was -4 degrees. That's 36 degrees below freezing.
wow.
And,
And you
and
survived.
and we survived. There's
Yeah.
actually a fun story in the book because it was there was actually a little touch and go for a minute. It was, yeah, it was something I didn't expect at all. And
Wow.
I learned that I can't climb Everest. Like there's I do not put me on Everest because one of the reasons I didn't have any hypoxia till the very top. And we actually, a couple of us physically carried people up the
Mm.
mountain, like arm in arm. We're walking you up the mountain. And because of that, and because, um, yeah, I actually took a guitar to the top so I could play a song on top of the mountain, which I don't suggest. Don't do it, Colin. But it's not a good idea.
John Lennon. What did you play? What did you imagine? What song did you play at the top?
It was Jumbo Bwana, an African song about Mount Kilimanjaro. Yeah.
Oh, cool. Okay.
And
Well,
so
listen, you got it up there. You played the song. I mean, that's amazing. That's it's extraordinary. It really is. And so
it,
when you think about that relative to you come back down, you life, and I know you have a big family and kids. What do you? It was the risk. Was it like getting outside your comfort zone? Is that part of why you did it? And do you think that relates to business? You think it's really that transformative experience? Do you think you can really tie that into a lot of your success and things that you've tried in your business day to day?
yeah, there's no question. All of those lessons I learned on the mountain are lessons that relate to business. For example, one of the biggest things, like if there's one thing for a brand new entrepreneur that I would say you have to do, is you have to pick your mountain. You have to pick what mountain you're going to climb.
Mm-hmm.
and and we think when we're starting businesses, we're young and we're excited, and hey, this is, the world's my oyster. I have any possibility of where I can go. The truth is, you've only got 3 mountain ranges you can climb. There's only 3. And everybody's like, well, I'm just going to go create this thing. But understanding which mountain range you're going to climb, and in the book I have what's called the success formula that helps identify which mountain range you're going to climb. And those 3 mountain ranges, the first one is lifestyle. You can do a lifestyle business. The second is what I call buy or be bought. You can do a mergers acquisition strategy, which typically has rapid growth associated with it. And the third is IPO. That's it. Those are the only mountain ranges you get to climb. Within those ranges, there's individual mountains. There's your particular mountain, and it's within one of the 3 ranges. And there's a beautiful mountain here in my home state of Utah called Mount Timpanogos. And I take people up the mountain as an interactive experience. And it's only about 12,000 feet. And I know it's just 12,000 is a piece of cake. Um, but that's very much like a lifestyle business. We start at night so that we can get to the summit by sunrise. We have just an amazing experience as I take these entrepreneurs up the mountain, and there's some PB&J in the backpack. We can take just one pair of clothing. You could even do it in shorts in the summertime. You get to the summit, have an incredible experience, come back down, and 12 hours later, you're done.
Hmm.
Kilimanjaro is your buy or be bought strategy. Kilimanjaro, you cannot, by law, you cannot climb the mountain unless you have a porter and a guide, at least one porter and a guide. Each of us had a couple porters and guides. And so our expedition, we had, what was it, 14 climbers. probably had 40 people total because of all the guides and everything else. But in that same way, you can climb Timpanogos in one night and a day and call it good. You can't do that with Kilimanjaro. And you have to plan. You have to plan very carefully what you're going to eat, what clothing you're going to wear. When you start, you're in a tropical rainforest and you go through 5 climate zones before hitting the top at an Arctic tundra. The top is classified as an Arctic tundra. The bottom is a tropical rainforest. And you start in shorts and you end in like full winter gear at 36 degrees below freezing. And so you have to know very carefully what you're doing. And you go in a team, you go in a group, you don't travel that mountain alone. And then Everest is like your IPO, where you add this whole layer of legal and regulations and everything else. And so deciding which mountain you're going to climb is critical. And then the success formula that has 4 elements, the success formula is how you actually get there.
Wow. That's interesting. Yeah. I mean, I think for someone that has started a number of businesses, I've never went any of these routes to think necessarily. I saw a niche and kind of went after it, but it's interesting to think about the different ways to enter, what you're trying to go after. Are you trying to go IPO? Are you trying to sell it? Whatever kind of business you're trying to attain, and starting that early in the process. And it makes sense. Starting out, the earlier you start and having that vision will lead you to the success that you need. The people on my show, they like numbers. They want to talk to me about some of your big wins, Curtis, like, some big scaling, where you helped a business owner scale, or somebody that started, you said basement to the finish line. Tell me some really high level, numbers that people will get excited to hear.
Yeah. So here in Utah, we have what's called the Silicon Slopes. It's kind of like Silicon Valley, but we got snow in Utah, so we got the Silicon Slopes. and one of the companies that I started mentoring and then actually came on as president, we grew that literally from basement, like literally basement, hanging black plastic in the basement of the founders, basements, to create offices all the way to 20 times growth, and became the fastest growing company in the Silicon Slopes, as well as the 6th fastest growing company on the Inc. 500 list in education and other things. And we're on the list for 6 years in a row, including the Hall of Fame. And the clients that I'm working with now, we're seeing double, triple, quadruple times growth year over year, just by applying some of the business principles.
And that company that you took that was on Inc. 500 and grew, did you know early that the business that they had a niche that could explode? Like, was there any signs kind of early on, and someone needed the roadmap? What did you see out there that kind of made you want to attach yourself to them?
Yeah, I was coaching several businesses at the time, and 3 had made me offers at the same time to come on board as either CEO or president of the company. And I turned those 3 down. And Andrew and Sean, those were the 2 brothers. These 2 brothers founded this company. And I said, I call it the beautiful spark. If I can see the beautiful spark in people, those are the kind of people I want to work with. And that spark is that indefatigable drive, that drive that gets them up early, has them go to bed late, and that spark of the excitement that they believe in their dream. They believe in the beauty of their dream, and that's who holds the future. And so Andrew and Sean asked me to come on, and they're the kind of people that have so much integrity, that have so much just drive. Like, to put it in perspective, some of my other clients, I would give them an assignment and they'd come back 2 or 3 weeks later. Andrew and Sean, I'd give them the same assignment and they would have it done the next day.
Oh,
and
wow.
had so much drive and so much integrity. And I said, you know what? If there's anybody I would want to work with, it would be these guys. And not only that, but I had been working with them for months ahead of this, and I saw the potential. Like, the e-learning industry was about ready to explode. And yeah, now the company is arguably one of the top 4 brands in the industry, along with Adobe and some others. And so, yeah.
Wow. When you got into business coaching, what did you think that kind of scenario would happen, or was that just a byproduct of being a great coach and mentor?
Well, I have to hand credit to Andrew and Sean because
Right. Right.
they, yeah, truly. I mean, and Andrew's still with the company, and he's even grown it just way beyond the 20 times growth. And so it's just amazing. But to answer your question, like, it used to be that you had to know a Warren Buffett, or some business guru from on high that would come and say, hey, let's teach you the secrets of business. It's not the way anymore. There are very clearly defined principles that if you add these principles to business, it works. I mean, it just works. And when you really identify, okay, where does the business need to go, and you have the discipline, and that's one of the keys, is the discipline. You have the discipline to apply the principles, because they're hard. Like,
Right.
if they weren't hard, everybody would do it.
Right.
They're hard. It
Yeah.
takes an emotional courage. It takes a lot of work. It's hard. And to be able to do that, when you do apply the principles, they do work.
Yeah.
I've seen it over and over and over again. It just happens.
Yeah. No, it's amazing. Absolutely. Before we get in a little bit farther, we are going to break for one of our sponsors, which is Guardian HR. Guardian HR, do not go about your HR alone. Guardian HR has been around for 20 years, helping business owners, small, medium-sized business owners, get the documents they need, handbooks. If you're, out lost and you're starting to build, I mean, we've been talking a lot about this, is having a good foundation. Guardian HR can be your partner. So check out guardianhr.com to learn more about some of the things that they offer. Curtis, so you scaled this business, a number of businesses, you wrote the Entrepreneur's Paradox, and now you're probably, money's not as much of an issue. What inspires you now? I know there's a new book. What's the new thing that you're really passionate about?
Yeah. Thank you so much for asking that question, because it is a passion, and it's one I didn't know I would ever be focused on. And when I wrote the Entrepreneur's Paradox, and it hit the Wall Street Journal bestseller list, my publisher said, hey, let's do a couple more of these business books. And so I was writing my second book, called The Timeline of Business. Having worked with so many entrepreneurs now, not only does everybody make the same mistakes, but they make the same mistakes at the same time. If you lay out a timeline, if you tell me what mistake you're in right now, I can pretty accurately predict what's coming next, because those mistakes line up linearly. And so I was in the midst of writing this book called The Timeline of Business. And it's okay if I get a little personal.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I went through a divorce about 4 or 5 years ago. And it was the hardest thing I've ever gone through, even harder than building a business in Kilimanjaro. And it was so hard, in fact, that it humbled me to my knees. And I had to really take a good look at me. And then as I was doing that, as I was journaling, as I was reinventing myself and saying what really is important in life, one of my best friends, I think it's important to say his name, Jerry Williamson, took his life. And thanks, Colin. And I'm not okay with that. I'm not okay. And if he would have understood the difference between a counterfeit emotion and an authentic emotion, I truly believe he'd be here with us today. I truly believe that he would still be here making people laugh so hard their guts hurt. I believe he'd still be here. And there's a couple of those emotions that in particular that are really critical. And I'm glad we're having this interview because this month is Suicide Prevention Month. And those pairings or those dyads, the first one is guilt versus shame. Guilt is actually a beautiful, healthy emotion. And guilt is getting such a bad rap in today's world. Guilt is, people say, oh, don't let them guilt trip you. Oh, don't, quit guilting. Guilt is actually beautiful. It comes from the old English word gilden, which means to repay or make whole. Guilt is the feeling of repayment. Guilt is the feeling of helping someone else become whole after we've hurt them. Shame, on the other hand, is so damaging. It's one of the most damaging emotions we can feel. If you look at the frequency scale, guilt is actually based in empathy. So it's a high frequency emotion. Shame is one of the lowest emotions you can feel. It's above apathy. Apathy is the lowest emotion you can feel. Shame is right above that. And yet they look and act and feel like each other, right? Guilt, guilt feels like shame and shame feels like guilt. But one says, I did something wrong. The other one says, I am wrong. My existence is wrong. One sense says, I did something bad. The other says, I am bad.
Right.
And understanding the difference between a counterfeit emotion and an authentic emotion, I think is so important, especially in today's world. We're in a new emotional pandemic right now. We've gotten through COVID. We've gotten through the viral pandemic. Right now, 33%, according to the CDC, 33% of people are experiencing extreme stress and anxiety. And of that, we're at the highest rate of suicide since the Great Depression. By the end of the year, we'll have the highest number of suicides ever recorded in history.
Wow.
And I'm not okay with that.
Yeah, it's an awful statistic. Yeah. So it sounds like what you're sort of talking about is, someone makes a mistake or does something and realizing that it's not them, that it's not that mistake, kind of separating it from, like, we've all done things that maybe were perfect and not taking it as like shame on me, like it's me, it's just something that happens, and sort of identifying it. Is that sort of part of the process that you're talking about, Curtis?
That's a really important part of it. Yeah. I'm glad you identified that because that's really important. Shame talks to the character. Guilt talks to the action. Shame says, I'm a horrible person for doing this. Guilt says, this hurt somebody. Help make them whole. Make them. That's what guilt is. And there's 4 criteria to understand if an emotion is authentic or counterfeit. And the first is connection. Does this emotion connect me? Does it connect me to you? Does it connect me to me? Does it connect me to God? And does it connect me to the truth? That's the first one. If it's a connecting emotion, like you think about guilt, in order to make you whole, like let's say I hurt you in some way, in order to make you whole, I have to connect with you. I have to come to you and I have to say, sorry, Colin. And those words, I'm sorry, those are amazingly connecting words. Those are beautiful words. And so there's that connection. Whereas shame says, the only thing shame says is hide, disconnect. And through COVID, we were told, shut our doors, shut our churches, shut our businesses, shut our, cover your smile. And we were told to disconnect. And because of that, it's had a dramatic effect on us emotionally. And so that first criteria of connection is critical. The second is direction. Where does this emotion take me? And the other pairing that I think would have been so important for Jerry to know is pain versus misery. Pain is an authentic emotion. Misery is not. Misery is the counterfeit. Pain has to happen. It's inevitable. Misery is optional. And if you think about the direction, say it with me. What's the common saying with pain? No pain, no
gain.
gain.
No gain, yeah.
because the direction pain takes you is either forward, upward, or it brings you together. Misery, has its own saying. Misery loves
Company.
company. And the direction that all of the counterfeit emotions take us is right back to themselves. Misery can't live without more misery.
Mm-hmm.
Misery can't exist unless it builds itself. If you don't let misery expand, it naturally dies.
Right.
And so that's the second criteria, is direction. The third is motivation. Is this emotion based in love and surrender and acceptance? Or is it based in fear and control?
Hmm.
If it's fear and control, that's a counterfeit emotion. If it's love and surrender, those are authentic. And then the final one is valuation. And just like you talked about, valuation, does this value my divine worth? The worth that doesn't have a title, it's not CEO, it's not on a trophy shelf behind me, it's the worth that's inside me. Or does it devalue me? Does it say I'm worth less or worthless? And those are the four criteria to understand if it's a counterfeit or an authentic emotion.
Well, it's a very interesting way to understand basic, emotions that we're all trying to navigate, and very sorry to hear about your friend. And you said he was a funny guy. It seems like a lot of times, the funniest people have the most misery, unfortunately. And I'd love to dive into more of counterfeit emotions and learn more about it, but I think people just need to buy this book, right? I mean, I think they need to spend some time and really get into it. And I will tell you, it's so interesting to meet someone that has had so much success in one area. And obviously you're very talented in business and coaching business, and you understand the fundamentals. But to go into the emotions, the counterfeit emotions, and write a book about something deeper that was probably outside your comfort zone, at least initially, I think that's a sign of a person that's really evolved. And so I really commend you for that, and excited about your journey in life that you've been able to, because I think a lot of people want to fall back on things that they're really good at. And so doing this personal work, based on what happened to your friend and your personal life, I think is pretty amazing. So, and I appreciate you opening up and sharing that, because obviously it's very personal to you.
Yeah, thank you. And it's interesting because I look back and I'm so grateful. I needed an upgrade. I needed a Curtis 2.0.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful that I had those trials, because without them, we wouldn't be talking today.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. Yeah. And you need to, I think the great part about life, if you can, survive some of the ups and downs, is when you come out of it. As much as, I asked a question about, your 25 and 26-year-old self and your business mistakes. I know personally, and I'm sure you had to go through those. Sometimes you have to go through it, even though you're helping people avoid some of the ones. And at the end of the day, you know, reading a book, getting a coach to help avoid some of the major mistakes is valuable, and people need it. And having mentors, I have a lot of mentors that I ask questions. I'm lucky that I always say the biggest thing for me is that my parents are still alive, and I think they've always been mentors for me, and in business and life, and having them to bounce ideas off. And now I have my wife, who's brilliant in business, and my partner and everything, to we're constantly throwing ideas out, and we have 3 young kids, and she always wants to come in and do more. And I listen, at night, on the weekends, we have a big decision. I come to you, and you give me, great insight, and that's as valuable as anything else, so it's just so interesting where you find those mentors and those people in your life. And for everybody, it's different. We're coming up on the end of our time here, but is there anything, Curtis, you wanted to sort of end with? And I first just want to say thank you so much. Such a fascinating interview to, I love talking about business. I love talking about numbers, but it was exciting to kind of talk a little bit about that and then really get into your personal journey. So is there anything that you wanted to kind of end the podcast with?
Yeah. I love that you spend that time with your wife. I love that.
Thank you. Yeah. She's during COVID, she was working the insurance business and had a, big business, and she had to step back because we had twins and 3 young kids at home. And so she took a step back, and it was a very hard transition for her for almost more than a year and a half. Her identity, it was a difficult time for her because she was used to having her own, work and, having those relationships. And so she went home and, was doing that. And it was a tough transition, and she did it. And now she loves it and she's so happy. But she's been, absolutely valuable. And everyone in the company it's ours, we built this thing together. So
that's so great. Yeah. I think if I were to leave one thing, I would say, don't climb the mountain alone. You don't have to climb the mountain alone. That's what I thought. I thought you did. And I didn't get a coach. I didn't get a mentor. I didn't reach out to friends. I didn't open the kimono in the proverbial kimono. I was so guarded with my business, and it was so damaging. And probably don't go through business alone, but don't go through life alone. Open up and share. And if anyone is struggling right now, there's 1 in 20 people have actually considered suicide. If you have more than 20 friends or 20 people in your family, one of them have considered committing suicide. If this is you, reach out, join my Facebook group, the Counterfeit Emotions Facebook group, call your local hotline, call a friend, just call Colin.
Call me. I love the chat to people. It's your message is good. And it's funny because my friends, I'm like the one, I don't like texting. I'm like, I want people, and my friends always, why do you call? And they're always like, why are you call? And I'm like, isn't that what this is? Aren't we supposed to talk to people on this? I know there's texting. I know it. But yeah, call me. You're right. Call me. So hey, call Curtis, call somebody, get on the phone.
Yeah, there's help out there. And I know there's a lot of pain in the world, and find out how beautiful pain can be. I always thought that pain and joy were exclusive. You couldn't have pain and joy at the same time in the same place. I was wrong. The counterfeit misery, that's the one you can't have with joy. Pain gets to be on the side of misery, or pain gets to be on the side of joy.
Yeah.
You get to decide. And so dig in, understand those counterfeit emotions and how damaging they are, and then step into the authentic, because that's where you'll find the one emotion that has no counterfeit. There's only one, and that's peace.
Beautiful. Thank you, Curtis. I appreciate it. And we'll have all the links below if anybody wants to contact Curtis. And great messaging out there today. And I really appreciate you coming on, and hopefully we can do this again.
I would love it. Thanks, Colin.
Thanks.